Welcome, everybody, to the Loud Little Ducky. I am going to remind you right off the bat to hit that like button. I want you to give me your thoughts and comments down below. Subscribe, turn those notification bells on, and let's jump into this video. I was going to make this my last video for the Karen Reed retrial, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out now. And because I want this one out before the verdict comes in. And then I will finish putting out the witness videos. But this one is more important for me to get out and get off my chest before the verdict comes in the retrial. So let's jump into my thoughts, which some could be very dangerous. But I want to start with where this case has to start. And that is going to be with where the Commonwealth has to take this case. The Commonwealth has the burden of proof. And if you believe not guilty, highly unlikely, less than unlikely, probably not, unlikely, possibly not, maybe not, perhaps, suspected, possibly guilty, probably guilty, likely guilty, strongly believe in guilt, your verdict has to be not guilty. And it isn't until the Commonwealth can prove to you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and in Massachusetts, and to a moral certainty. That is what the Commonwealth has to prove to you. And if you are thinking, well, the defense didn't show me anything, the defense didn't prove anything, it's not their job to prove to you anything. It is the Commonwealth's. And if you have questions at the end of this case of, well, could it have been this way? Could it have been that way? Then your vote is not guilty. And I would have told the jury, if you go back there and you are still questioning, how did this happen? I don't agree with the Commonwealth's theory, but could it have happened another way where she could still be guilty? Your vote is not guilty. Because to vote guilty, you have to agree with the Commonwealth's theory. You have to believe that Karen Reed backed her vehicle in reverse, striking John O'Keefe in his arm, and flung him or made him spin to where he flew into the yard, landed on his head, hit his head on the ground, and that he was holding a glass when he got hit, and that it got broke due to the vehicle strike. And it somehow threw the taillight pieces over here and John O'Keefe over here, even though the car is going this way. He's backing into him. John O'Keefe had to spin and go back this way, and the taillights had to go back that way to end up on the lawn as well. That's what you have to believe. Now, what gets me questioning things is this chart. The glass on the bumper doesn't match the cup found by John O'Keefe's body. Does not match the cup. The bumper glass does not match the cup. And you may say, oh, well, what about this glass here? It matches glass over here. The glass that Proctor found was not a glass. It was just a glass piece. It wasn't a cup. It wasn't like a second cup. The only cup that was found was the cup over here. And I don't know if in the second trial we know where this cup came from. In the first trial, they may have said that it matched the cups at the waterfall or C.F. McCarthy's, one of those. But in this trial, we do not know where that cup came from. We also know that they did not search the house. Now, does that mean that the people in the house are guilty of murder, murdering and killing John O'Keefe? Not necessarily. Do I think there has to be some sketchy things happening for some of the evidence to be where it is? Yes, I do. Something interesting as well, like I said, with the glass pieces or the taillight pieces and John O'Keefe, I want y'all to look at this. If John O'Keefe was struck in the arm, you can see that. Let me see if I can. All right. You can see John O'Keefe could end up over here. We don't know how far he would be spun or flung into 34 Fairview. But the pieces you can see are going backwards. And they're going to land pretty much in the road in that area. They are not going over to the side with John O'Keefe's body. So one of my questions has been, how did the taillight pieces not go back with the vehicle when it went backwards or land in the road? How did the pieces of the taillight go sideways and end up on the lawn? Because we don't have any evidence of Karen Reed backing up onto the lawn of 34 Fairview and doing that. We don't have any tire marks or wheel markings or anything showing that. So we cannot conclude that. We cannot even make that up as a scenario because it wasn't presented to us. And so if you think Karen Reed could have gone sideways or on top of the yard, well, the Commonwealth hasn't told you that's what they think. So therefore, if you think that, your vote is not guilty because there's no evidence to support it. Because that is not her backing up 24 miles an hour in reverse and hitting John O'Keefe. Then we can let me get to I want to get to all right, so I'm going to stop sharing this. Oh, I went back too far. John O'Keefe's arm. To me, that looks like a dog or an animal. It looks like what a person or an officer would do. This is a police officer who, if they had a dog coming at them, possibly would put their arm up like this, and the dog would have to come here. I don't think the paint test proved anything, but I think those are from a dog. Now, I don't know which ones are dog bites or dog scratches. I do not know. The holes remind me of my dog's paw and one of her nails getting stuck in one of my sweaters, and then I have to get it unstuck, and I can see something being pulled out if her nails are for some reason not trimmed. That's just one piece. And I wanna look at this X-ray that they did in closing argument as well. You see in this X-ray, there is no shoulder dislocation, no elbow dislocation, not even a broken finger. With a 6,000-pound vehicle, as Hank Brennan wants to say, came back and hit, you would think maybe there would be a broken finger. No broken hand, no radius or ulna broken, nothing. Nothing's out of place. Nothing is inflamed. You can also see his pelvis here. Nothing is out of place there. To me, he did not get hit by a car. They talk about, oh, his phone didn't move. Oh, the cell phone data. Oh, the battery temperature. Let's look at the battery temperature. The battery temperature is a bit interesting too. This battery temperature, if you look down at January 29th and you go down to 1:36 in the morning, the battery temperature is at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And then it doesn't have another drop in the battery temperature until 6:06 a.m. And then it is down to 53 or 43 degrees. We do not have any temperatures between 1:36 a.m. and 6:06 a.m. But it took apparently from 1:36 to 6:06 for the phone to drop 7 degrees. Look at the data, Hank. That's what Hank tells us. Look at the data. The data doesn't lie. Why is there no temperature change from 1:36 to 6:06? It's odd. It's very odd. Then they talk about the different snow, um, and I can bring up bad investigation, not looking in the house, the red Solo cups, not knowing what you tested, Proctor and the things that he said, but those are all horrible. And let's look at the timeline. Let's bring that up. I'm going to try to embiggen this. Oh, wait. Let me not do that. Okay. Let me try another way. Okay. Nope, you can't see it that way. Let me just hide myself as we go through this. So we know that they left the waterfall, and the Lexus was turned on at 12:12 a.m. on January 28th. Or sorry, this is January 29th because it's after midnight. January 29th. They leave the waterfall around 12:13 a.m. John O'Keefe's phone between 12:11 a.m. and 12:21 a.m. takes 170 steps, and it's showing that the car is driving about 10 to 20 miles per hour in this time period. Then from 12:21 to 12:24 a.m., John O'Keefe has 80 steps. 12:22 to 12:24, John O'Keefe's phone registers 3 flights of stairs. At that time, the phone battery is 77 degrees, which it originally was 82 degrees. And this is during the time period as well where the 3-point turn happens. And it's about 20 miles per hour at one point during this. Then we have at 12:19:33 a.m., John O'Keefe's phone pings at 34 Fairview. The car is driving 10 to 30 miles per hour. Then Burgess adjusts the clock. And I don't know if I have Burgess's clock adjustment right on this particular PowerPoint. No. Originally, they were saying 12:31:38, but now they are saying, or this is the 3-point turn that he adjusted. So we haven't even gotten to there. All right. So then we get to that adjusted clock 3-point turn that happened on Cedar Crest is where the 3-point turn happened. Then at 12:24:37 a.m., I wonder if John O'Keefe could be walking because it's about 1.4 miles per hour. Um, and then at 12:24:38, it says John O'Keefe has arrived to 34 Fairview. The car is showing 0 miles per hour and that it's near the flagpole. 12:29 a.m., John O'Keefe's Face ID and reads a text in the front yard, somewhere maybe near the flagpole. 12:31 a.m. to 12:36 a.m., John O'Keefe has 36 steps, which can cover about 84 feet. And the flagpole to the door is about 72 feet. So that could put him inside the house. It could. Because according to Ian Whiffen, the direction that it was going was west, which was towards the house. Everybody denies that he went into the house. Okay. Then we have, according to Burgess's clock adjustment, that the Lexus went in reverse between 13 miles to 24 miles an hour on Fairview between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12. And he still could be taking steps in that time period because the 36 steps, it starts at 12:31 and ends at 12:36. So, I don't know. And the phone is 72 degrees at this point. We know at 12:32:09, John O'Keefe manually locked his phone. This was the last time he locked his phone with the lock button on the side of the phone. At 12:33:14 until 5:52:26 a.m., John O'Keefe's phone was in a pocket state. Was he in the front yard, near the flagpole? Was he in the house? Who knows? The first unread message, text message that John O'Keefe gets was at 12:40:31 a.m. There is a gap in John O'Keefe's phone data from 1:36 a.m. to 6:02 a.m., which is really interesting because we don't have a phone temperature during that time. And we have Higgins, according to the Canton PD surveillance videos, which we don't know how many minutes fast or slow those are, at Canton PD around that 1:30, 1:35 time period. And then Higgins leaves. We do not know where Higgins went after that. We do not have Higgins' phone. If you watch the first trial, you know why we do not have Higgins' phone. It's because he got rid of his phone the day before a preservation order. He threw the SIM card in one bag, the phone in another bag, and drove those bags to an army base or a military base and threw those in the dumpster at the military base and got a new phone. So, but not before extracting text messages between him and Karen Reed that were flirtatious and cringy. But he turned those over, but he made sure that the phone, to get anything else off of it, was gone. So where did Higgins go after he left Canton PD at 1:35ish in the morning? Did he go back to 34 Fairview? Was there a Faraday bag involved? Because why is there a gap in his data from 1:36 a.m. to 6:02 a.m.? Why? Why is there no phone data during that time period? It's just weird. I'm not saying a Faraday bag was used. That hasn't been brought into evidence. It has been something that people have asked about, but there's a gap in the phone data for some reason on John O'Keefe's phone. We also know that at 12:35 a.m., Karen Reed's first unanswered call to John O'Keefe was unanswered. 12:36 a.m., Karen Reed connects to the Wi-Fi at John O'Keefe's house. It is about a 6-minute drive. 12:37:31, Karen Reed leaves first voicemail to John O'Keefe. The phone temperature is still at 72 degrees. Jen McCabe says she goes to the door in the first trial and texts hello. 12:41:35, the second voicemail, and you hear the beeping sounds and the hills where we know Karen Reed is in John O'Keefe's house at this time. When the phone call starts, at least. At 12:42:08, the Lexus powers off, according to Burgess. Everything in yellow is according to Burgess. 12:42:09, Jen texts, "Where are you?" 12:45:53, "Hello," from Jennifer McCabe. 1:18:38 a.m. to 4:38:14 a.m., Karen Reed has no phone activity as far as calling John O'Keefe or anything. I think she was probably fell asleep. The phone was at 66 degrees around that 12:45:53. Karen Reed awakes and calls Jen McCabe, calls Carrie Roberts. Her car is powered on. Karen Reed powers on her Lexus at 5:07:46. She ends up leaving and backing into John O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse at 5:07:58 a.m., which could be where she cracked her taillight. She goes to Jen's house. They come back. Um, Carrie Roberts and Jen and Karen all go back to John O'Keefe's house, drop off Karen Reed's Lexus, and then they go to look for John O'Keefe. There is a video at 5:46:29 of them returning to Meadows. They find John O'Keefe, and Jennifer McCabe calls 911 at 6:04 a.m. And steps start again on John O'Keefe's phone at 6:04 a.m. At 6:06 a.m., the phone is in a clear state, not a pocket state. It is 43 degrees now. And it shows that it's in the front yard. And then at 6:14 to 6:15, Carrie Roberts picks up John O'Keefe's phone and puts it in her pocket. At this point, it is 37 degrees, the phone battery temp. So I don't know why at 6:04 there are steps starting again on John O'Keefe's phone if Carrie Roberts doesn't pick it up till about 10 minutes later. So that is the timeline of that morning. And then a bunch of stuff is said. So we have statements from Jennifer McCabe that said, she told me about her tail light. She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Carrie Roberts says that Karen told her that he got hit by a snowplow, all this stuff. Could Karen Reed have said those things? Possibly. Does it mean that she said them on the phone call that morning? No. It also could be these ladies saying that she said something that she didn't say. It could be something that Karen Reed said at 34 Fairview that morning after she saw John, and they're thinking she said it before she saw John. There could be a time lapse memory of just knowing she said it at some point, but not remembering exactly when she said it. Um, bunch of she said, he said, she said. Okay. We have that when the CERT team did their initial search with the leaf blower, there were no taillight pieces found. They found the cocktail glass, but there were no taillight pieces near that cocktail glass that was discovered. They didn't discover the shoe or the hat. They got blood off of the snow, which just looked like droplets. And they put those into red Solo cups in a Stop and Shop evidence bag. And they got the glass. And they don't know about his arm scrapes yet because he was wearing a long sleeve hoodie. He is unresponsive. Karen Reed tries to do CPR. They get him into the ambulance. They go and get him to the hospital, try to warm him up. They at least get his body to 80 degrees, and then they call him deceased. Karen Reed was frantic that morning. Now, when did the taillight pieces get there? Why didn't anybody see any red taillight pieces around that cocktail glass? The fact that there was no marking of where John O'Keefe was, there's no picture of where John O'Keefe was, there's no measurements. I want to know if we knew where John O'Keefe's body was. What would be really interesting to find out is if some of those taillight pieces they discovered were on top of a pile of snow that had formed after John O'Keefe left, because heavy snow started after John O'Keefe's body had been moved. And if there were taillight pieces found on top of the snow where John O'Keefe's body originally was. because that wouldn't be plausible because there wouldn't be taillight pieces on top of the snow. It would be buried underneath the snow if it would have fallen. Were there taillight pieces where John O'Keefe's body actually laid? And now there's just taillight pieces where his body was, but nobody saw those before. They weren't there earlier. Why doesn't the glass on the bumper match the cocktail glass? Those are questions you have to ask. But my theory is that could explain possibly all of this and make nobody in this case a murderer is at one point in trial one, when Brian Albert testified, he talked about letting Chloe, the German Shepherd, out to use the restroom. Now, I do not know if he lets Chloe out the back, which I would presume so, to use the restroom. Maybe the side gate was opened. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe she got into the front yard somehow. Maybe there's a hole dug or something. But let's say Chloe went out to go to the restroom. John O'Keefe is getting there at the time that Chloe goes out to go to the restroom. And when John O'Keefe is in the front lawn. Chloe, not being good with strangers, is like, who is this human? And goes to jump on or possibly bite and scratch John O'Keefe. When Chloe goes to bite and scratch at John O'Keefe, a stranger in the yard where Chloe lives, John, being inebriated, loses his balance and falls backwards. John put up his arm to get Chloe not to like jump on him or get him off of him. He fell backwards. That would allow him to hit his head and sustain the blunt force trauma to the back of his head. And if he was holding his drink that he got out of Karen Reed's car when this happened, when he fell backwards, maybe that broke the glass as well. It could also explain the markings on John O'Keefe's arm. And then Chloe goes back inside from using the restroom. Or they see Chloe attacking John O'Keefe on the front lawn. His phone could have been in his pocket, and when he fell back, it fell out of his phone. It fell out of his pants. I don't know. So the phone's underneath him. Karen Reed can still crack her taillight and hit John O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse. But the thing is, in order for that to possibly happen, you have to have, because we have to remember that the people in 34 Fairview were doing some shady stuff. And maybe it's because Chloe did something on accident. Whether it was in the front yard. I'm gonna say, okay, it can be in the front yard. And they're like, "Oh my god, we're gonna get in trouble because this happened." And so they just leave him out there. Maybe Caitlin Albert, when she leaves, she takes Chloe with her. That's why Jennifer McCabe didn't see the dog that morning. That's why the officers that went into 34 Fairview didn't hear or see a dog that morning either. But we know that the Alberts have Chloe the dog at this point. Chloe gets rehomed. They sell their house for whatever reason. And nobody inside the house killed John O'Keefe, and Karen Reed didn't kill John O'Keefe. But somebody in that house knows something, whether Chloe did it or something else. And maybe they were trying to cover for the dog because they could get in trouble because the Alberts were the owner of this dog and it ended up killing John O'Keefe. Then they see in the morning that Karen Reed's taillight is cracked. Proctor is friends with some people. He decides, I'm going to help them out a little bit, plants a little evidence. Still doesn't make anybody a murderer. And we know that the wounds on John O'Keefe's arm were before he died. Somebody still had to do some shady shit for this evidence and taillight and all this stuff to happen. And we know that they've done a decent job on some other cases, so why be so horrible on this one? But that could happen. It involves Proctor doing some stuff. We know he's been up to something. But can Karen Reed and technically the Alberts be innocent? Both be innocent of murder? Yeah, they could. It explains why John doesn't have any broken arms. Now, could there also be a possibility? What I don't know about the amount of blood that John O'Keefe would have lost from his head. That one's not really explained because to me, there should be a huge puddle of blood that was just not there on the lawn at 34 Fairview. If somebody could explain that. Um, if they would have looked in the house, they would have been able to say, hey, there is blood here or there's no blood here. It would have been used to exclude or include. We just don't know. But I think whatever happened to John O'Keefe was an accident. I do not think anybody purposely tried to kill John O'Keefe. Even if Higgins wanted to fight John O'Keefe, or Colin wanted to fight John O'Keefe, or Chloe didn't like the stranger and attacked him, whether it was outside on the lawn or in the garage or in the basement, wherever. It doesn't mean anybody purposely tried to murder him. I think whatever happened to him was an accident. And then, because the accident ended up causing John O'Keefe to die, people freaked out. They're like, oh, why would they place John O'Keefe on their own lawn? John O'Keefe, it was going to come out that Karen dropped him off at this party and that he was supposed to go to that house that night. So either way, whether they put John O'Keefe across the street, down the road, or whatever, John O'Keefe, there was a link back to 34 Fairview. So it was still going to lead back to 34 Fairview, no matter where John O'Keefe was placed that night. Because he was dropped off there and he never came home. And the last place that anybody knew he was at 34 Fairview. So no matter where the body was put, it would lead back to 34 Fairview every time. Maybe they knew that. Maybe original thought was, we thought he left. He said he was leaving. We didn't know he was out there. Maybe if Karen hadn't cracked her tail light, maybe they would have blamed it on a snow. Maybe they would have blamed it on Lucky. Maybe John fell backwards and tripped and hit his head. And a random dog from the neighborhood came up to see, what is this? They smelt blood from him falling backwards and hitting his head or something. Animals can sniff that out. Random dogs roaming around the neighborhood in the blizzard. Wouldn't be the first time there were animals out in a blizzard that should be inside their homes. The thing is we don't know. And the Commonwealth has not been able to rule out any of the things that I've laid out. They can't get rid of that theory. They can't explain a clean x-ray. They can't explain the glass on the bumper. To me, they can't explain the markings on his arm. They can't explain where the blood is from John O'Keefe's head wound. Why Chloe was rehomed. Why nobody searched the house. Why is there a gap in John O'Keefe's phone data? Answer those questions for me. And if you can't, Karen Reed is not guilty. Commonwealth has not proved this case beyond a reasonable doubt. I want to know what holes are in my theory. Let me know. What am I missing with evidence? Because animal explains the clothing on John O'Keefe and the arm scratches. The phone, he could have fell backwards and hit his head, and his phone went out of his pocket when he fell backwards. When he landed, the glass broke. But what's also weird is that there's like droplets in a bunch of different places on the lawn. It's not in one consistent spot. How did John O'Keefe lose his shoe? How far was his hat away from his head? Because to me, it should have just been right there near his body. The fact that we don't know where all these evidence pieces were in relation to where John O'Keefe's body was is a question. The fact that I do not know how John O'Keefe and taillight pieces went to the side while the vehicle continued going backwards is a question for me. The key cycle are a question for me. And I've gone over the key cycles in many videos. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Is my theory crazy? And could it be that nobody in this case is a murderer? There's some shady stuff going on. And maybe they're trying to cover up for Chloe attacking somebody and accidentally knocking somebody over. But nobody purposely killed anybody. And so when they get up there and say, I didn't kill anybody, I didn't punch anybody, I didn't murder anybody, no one in that house murdered anybody, John O'Keefe didn't come in the house. Could both sides be telling mostly the truth? And then one side is just skimming the truth. Could Proctor be alone in covering some of this stuff up? Higgins is doing shady stuff. Right around that time that phone gap in John O'Keefe's phone happens, when he was moving cars, doing administrative work while he was drunk. Nobody can explain how John O'Keefe died. And sadly, the O'Keefes will never know how John O'Keefe died. Whether it was of his own accord by falling because he was inebriated, whether it was because somebody punched him, whether something else happened, John O'Keefe's family will never have the truth. That doesn't mean that Karen Reed is responsible for it. It doesn't mean that the Alberts are responsible for it. It doesn't mean Higgins is responsible for it. Any of the McCabe's. I think Proctor is responsible for some cover-up and some stuff that he did. But just because somebody dies, it doesn't mean that they were murdered. Doesn't mean that they were purposely killed. Accidents can happen. And is that what happened in this case? Was it just an unfortunate accident? Was it at the hands of somebody else? Or was it at the hands of himself? We won't know. And you can be mad at the police for that. Instead of blaming everybody, I don't think that if anybody, I don't think Karen Reed is guilty. I do not think John O'Keefe was hit by a car. But I also think that whether it was a McCabe or an Albert sitting in the Karen Reed seat, I don't think they have enough to convict any of them either. Which means that if somebody did accidentally or purposely kill John O'Keefe, there will be no justice for the O'Keefe family. Because there is not enough evidence to convict anybody of this. That's my theory. I don't need a dictionary for the word theory. I know what it means. Of John O'Keefe and the Karen Reed case. I want to hear from you guys, though. But that's going to be it for me. And I am going to play an outro of Motive, Means, and Opportunity. And do we know if people had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to kill someone? And actually, you do not have to prove motive in a case. You need to make sure that they had the means and the opportunity to do it, but you do not have to have a motive, because sometimes people kill for no reason. But I don't think that happened here, because I don't think anybody purposely murdered anybody. That's it for me. And stay tuned for the outro if you want to, so you can think about things. But let me hear you in the comments down below. Bye.
I maybe be angry, jealous, or in love. Make sure outsiders don't ruin the reputation and reveal our secrets. They need to be stopped, or the truth will come out. Motive, means, opportunity. I have the knowledge, the skill, the support, the tools to become a killer. Motive, means, opportunity. Now the opportunity reveals itself by time and a shady alibi. I have no reason to explain the things that I do. Can I do the crime in the time? Can I cover this up, or does this mean we're corrupt? Motive, means, opportunity. Do I have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Motive, means, opportunity. The motive, the means, and the opportunity. Motive, means, opportunity. I have the knowledge, the skill, the support, the tools to become a killer. Motive, means, opportunity. Now the opportunity reveals itself by time and a shady alibi. I have no reason to explain the things that I do. Can I do the crime in the time? Can I cover this up, or does this mean we're corrupt? Motive, means, opportunity. Do I have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Motive, means, opportunity. Motive means opportunity.